much for checking out the Sportsline Podcast on the CHCH Media and Parrot platform. I'm Bubba O'Neill. As we're so proud to do, local athletes, coaches, executives, and broadcasters from Southern Ontario are under the spotlight. Today, that spotlight shines on the world of professional wrestling. Well, as ring savvy began at the age of 16 and after paying his dues, opportunities with the World Wrestling Federation and World Championship Wrestling came his way. With a more complete knowledge of the business, Windsor's Scott D'Amore worked all over the planet with various promotions. Yet, leadership was always in his blood, and the retired wrestler, manager, and promoter served as the big dog at Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, Global Force, and Impact. But now, there's a new challenge, a return of a Canadian blast from the past.
This has been the battleground of countless wars.
This is the biggest card ever to be put together in Maple Leaf Gardens,
where legends were forged in the fires of combat.
The place is going wild.
And the chosen few became immortal.
The new heavyweight champion of the world, Harley Race.
On Saturday, May 10th, the war returns once more to the Mecca of professional wrestling in Toronto.
For decades, Maple Leaf Wrestling was the standard for professional wrestling excellence in this country. Now, after a number of house shows, the new, rebranded Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling is making its anticipated return to its rightful historic home at Toronto's Mattamy Athletic Centre. To explain how the deal went down and why a return to the arena at the corner of Carlton and Church Street is so important is founder, promoter, president. He's the big dog, Scott D'Amore. Thanks for joining us, partner.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bubba.
Boy, I'm telling you, there's a lot of excitement with the wrestling community for what you're doing. Maple Leaf Wrestling. You've had a number of cards that have happened around the province, but the big dog, as I was saying, is Northern Rising. You've got to be really, really pumped up.
Yeah, to be able to bring the Maple Leaf brand of pro wrestling back to the most historic venue in not just Canadian wrestling, but Canadian sports history with the Mattamy Athletic Centre, formerly Maple Leaf Gardens. It's just, it's a dream come true. It's funny. I've been saying for 25 plus years, I wanted to run a wrestling event at Maple Leaf Gardens. And when I first started saying it was ridiculous, the words even coming out of my mouth, even I knew that I sounded ridiculously naive and stupid, but it's something I wanted to do. It's something I cared about. And now here we are in 2025, rebranded Maple Leaf Pro, bringing back the tradition and now returning to our spiritual home. Like you said, the corner of Carlton and Church. And it's going to be a special night this Saturday.
You know, before we kind of get to where you are right now, you've been a sort of friend and mentor to so many, and I've heard these words, and let's kind of go back before we go forward. I guess through all the years that you were in the ring and all the knowledge that you accomplished, as I said, you ended up being an executive, TNA Wrestling, riding the wave, and then you were released from that promotion. Was that the decision or the time where you said, I'm going to do something on my own?
Oh, I for years, this goes back, I first acquired the rights to the archival footage, like the library for the original Tunney's Maple Leaf Wrestling. It's got to be 12 years ago. And I always had an intent of something to do with it, didn't know quite what. And then it just keeps getting pushed aside for different projects, both in wrestling and outside of wrestling. And it really, when I went back to TNA Wrestling in 2017, I was kind of starting to get the wheels rolling. But then I ended up just rolling up my sleeves and getting in so deep there with Anthem Sports, which is the Canadian company that owns TNA Wrestling, and working there on reviving that brand. This kind of got pushed to the side again. So when everything went down last February, it was February of 2024, and then the news was out that I was departing TNA. It was one of those things. At that point, I was just kind of like bummed out. It sucks. It hurts. But you hold your head up, you walk around, you're okay. And I needed a little bit of time and a little bit of space just to kind of clear my head. I've been going so hard for so many years at that point. I just needed a few months, and I knew when I would know the time would be right. So then it was, about this time, it was spring of last year where I started feeling like, okay, it's time to do something. We started working on it for an August announcement. We announced last August 8th, which is my 50th birthday. So a little something to distract everybody from my birthday. We make our official announcement of our return, hold our first events in October, all with the mindset of in 2025 being at the Mattamy Athletic Center, the former Maple Leaf Gardens. So it's, that little separation in there was so key to recharge my batteries and get perspective on what I wanted to do next. Because I'm not somebody that wants to do the same thing over and over again. I want to do something different. And we were talking about this in May of last year. We didn't know politically where things were going to sit as far as for tariffs and all this stuff. We just knew that it had been so hard for Canadians for so long to get opportunities in professional wrestling. And, I felt that myself with my team was in the unique situation where we could improve that situation for Canadian athletes. And we could provide Canada what it hasn't had in decades, which was its own national, world-renowned professional wrestling company to call its own. So that's the reason why our mandate is to develop, grow, and showcase the very best in Canada on screen and behind it, to provide those opportunities for those Canadians, because it's so hard without being able to make your way to the United States sometimes to get noticed. So we're going to change that, and that's what we're doing with Maple Leaf Pro.
Well, and that's what I think is just so important when you talk about this, because we see it in soccer and basketball and baseball. We're seeing the emergence of Canadian athletes, but, I don't know if it was for wrestling. There was a void there for a young Canadian woman or man that wants to wrestle where they wanted to go. But if I may, you talk about the importance of what's called now the Mattamy Athletic Center and why it was important to you. Maple Leaf Wrestling at one time was on this very station on CHCH. You know that. We actually saw probably a couple of your matches. Why was it important to go to that building?
I just think, as I said, it's the spiritual home. Although the very first ever Maple Leaf Wrestling show wasn't in Maple Leaf Gardens. It only wasn't in Maple Leaf Gardens because they had to wait until it was finished being constructed. And that's when the first wrestling card was held in the Gardens. It's been our home. I always tell people, for people that don't understand, it's this is our Madison Square Garden. This is our Mecca. This is where it all went down, because when you went to this venue on a Sunday for Maple Leaf Wrestling, you didn't just see Maple Leaf Wrestling stars. You saw stars from all over. It was one of the few places in a time when there was 40 companies around the world. You saw Bruno Sammartino and Bob Backlund from the WWF. You saw the stars of Jim Crockett Promotions and the NWA. You saw Vern Gagne and Nick Bockwinkel coming from the AWA. You saw Giant Baba and that coming from Japan. They all came together and were there at Maple Leaf Gardens on those magical Sundays. And that's so important to our history in this country in professional wrestling. And I also think it's so importantly when you look at it from a cultural point of view. We are a country that is made up of immigrants. And, I'm the child of an immigrant, like so many others. My family immigrated here, ours from Italy. And when you come to this strange new world, and there's so many things that you don't understand, like my Uncle Dominic always told me the reason why he gravitated towards wrestling, because you spend so much of your day back then not understanding anything that's going around and feeling confused, turning on the TV or going down to Windsor to the market or in Toronto to Maple Leaf Gardens. You understood this is a really bad man and he needs to be stopped. And this guy over here is the guy that's going to stop him. So it was something that people could coalesce and come together with. And that's why you see the ethnic stars like the Bruno Sammartinos, the Pedro Moraleses. For us, in Toronto, the Tony Parisis. When you look at culturally, Sweet Daddy Siki and being such a historical an influential person in the history of culture and race in our country and the world. And you start looking at it, there's so much history in that venue. And while the venue, as we all know, has changed a little different, you can do your grocery shopping on the first floor. It's still that exterior yellow brick, that marquee that says Maple Leaf Gardens. You walk into that arena and you look up and you see that. I see that same ceiling that I saw when as a 12-year-old boy or 11, 12-year-old boy, when I walked into the Gardens it was a Saturday night to see my Toronto Maple Leafs. It's just it's awe-inspiring, and it just brings you back. So we want to take that and provide that chance to relive that memory for people, and we want an opportunity for them to share that memory with the next generation, whether it be their kids, their grandkids, or just somebody that they know. Go there and have that shared experience.
You talk about the new generation, and if we're looking at that new generation of especially Canadian wrestlers, this Northern Rising card, like, this is the place where you want to see. Like, you have some outstanding up-and-comers that we're going to see Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have an unbelievable mix. We have stars from AEW like Josh Alexander and Speedball Mike Bailey, who are probably the two best Canadian wrestlers in the world right now, arguably. Got ELP, who's a Canadian, but with New Japan Pro Wrestling. You got Giselle Shaw, who's a female Canadian, who's in the finals to crown the first ever women's Canadian champion here. And then you just look from around the world. You have the Good Brothers fresh off of their run in the WWE coming here. You have the War Dogs and Zack Sabre, who's one of the most technically sound and amazing wrestlers in the history of the sport. You know, a great UK talent coming here. It's such a blend of talent coming together. I'm just truly excited, and it just feels like it's hard to believe we're just a few days away from this event.
And I would think because of your ties with the Can-Am Wrestling School, you founded that and got that up and going, that you even feel a little closer to these Canadian wrestlers, like maybe like you were for yourself maybe 3 decades ago.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. And the thing is, like I experienced, I was at the border and was held, was fingerprinted, was turned around and said, no, like what you did was wrong, because, you know, and thankfully I was a lucky one. I got to go, I went before an immigration judge. The judge was able to see all the facts and say, okay, like this was an honest mistake. And didn't ban me from the U.S. I still spent 16 months waiting for my hearing before I was allowed back in. But people like Speedball Mike Bailey, like Canadians and non-Americans, you don't understand immigration law. Somebody tells you something, you show up. Next thing you know, you're sitting in a room. Next thing you know, they're fingerprinting you and saying you're not allowed here for 5 years. So, you know, having this platform and being able to help facilitate exposure worldwide and building that reputation and getting seen by the right people while still here in Canada is something that I'm truly passionate about, because I think, you know, I think you try to help everybody, but at the end of the day, what do they say? Charity starts at home. And let's build something that focuses on and highlights some of the great Canadians we have here.
You know, I would think here, again, your experience being in the ring, wrestling, being a manager, a promoter, actually tied as a president of a big-time promotion, I can only think of putting together a card like this. Can you explain to our listeners and viewers how difficult putting together a big card like this is? Because there are so many levels other than just the wrestlers.
Yeah, it's you know, it's funny. Look, everybody loves the fantasy book, right? Loves to put together like dream cards. And that's fun. And even that, I mean, that's a lot of fun because you don't have to deal with all of the different levers when it comes to who can do what, who gets along with who, where's this person going to be? Like, if you take a guy like, hey, this guy's in this like company A, well, oh, we'd be really cool to have him do this with, you know, with this wrestler. Oh, we can't do that because he's doing this here down the road. So you have to sit there, and what it is really a lot of, you start off with your blue sky scenario and say, this is what we want to do. Then you start going around. And one of the things that we've been very successful with, and I'm very proud of, is our ability to collaborate with the AEWs, with the New Japans, with the TNA wrestlings, these companies, and be able to facilitate that type of stuff. But you've got to almost get an understanding for everything that's going on in their universe with their product in order to be able to get the right mix of ingredients. Because it doesn't just have to work for you here with what you're doing. It has to be something that these talents that are under contract with another bigger company, that company's comfortable with. So like sometimes that blue sky scenario that you come with as a card or a lineup looks very similar to the final one, and sometimes it's so drastically different. So it's always a process, but that's kind of the challenge of it. And I think we've done a great job so far at MLP putting out great cards. And I think that this card on Saturday night is as good as any card you could see anywhere in the world. Like, you just have a great mix of male and female talent from all over the world. You've got a mix of big bruisers that are going to be pounding, meat on meat. You've got amazing technical wizards, like Zack Sabre Jr. and Jonathan Gresham. You've got some of the best high flyers in the world that this wrestling industry has ever seen. So I just think it's a great, exciting mix. For an exciting brand that's coming back and going back to the most famous venue and institution in Canadian sport. And, Bubba, I know you mentioned earlier about, it being on CHCH TV. Well, to me, that was Maple Leaf Wrestling. And even just like as the opening for this show was playing, like seeing that CHCH logo, seeing Sportsline, it's like these are things from my childhood. And it's like, it's CHCH was very much a home for Maple Leaf Wrestling for many years. So all of these things, these pieces of Canadiana, I think we need to, as Canadians, stop and celebrate a little more.
Scott, I'll tell you this, you're a bit of a rock star, and whether you know it or not, because when the word got around the station that I was chatting with you today, there's a number of wrestling lifers in this building that said, what? So they asked if they could have a couple of fan questions. I just took two. So you did bring his name up, so I'll ask you the first one, and you brought his name up, but if you can expand on it. Josh Alexander's on the card this weekend. Can you tell us about your history and relationship with him?
I mean, look, I've known Josh for many, many years. He's what's the old saying? It takes years to become an overnight success. Josh went out there and was on the independent circuit for many, many years, just starting to build a name for himself after what was probably, a dozen or more years. And then he had it all taken away with a neck injury and had to retire, and, went and like a true, A1 first class person would do, is like, okay, can't do this anymore. Need to go get a job, take care of my family. And he goes out there and he starts working, a job in the trades. Honorable thing to do. And then lo and behold, as about a year later, I think and it's a follow-up checkup, they kind of go, like, your neck looks great. Then they saw no reason why he couldn't return. So he returned to wrestling then with just a renewed vigor and passion and focus. And that's really where I got to know him more. And I saw the drive that he had. He's super talented, but God didn't gift him with the best box of physical tools. He took what God gave him and molded it into the best version of himself. And those, to me, are some of the best success stories. So I think Josh is a perfect example of what we are as Canadians. He's a good, hardworking guy who gets up in the morning, works hard, good family man, and takes out there. He's like, it's like hockey, right? Hockey isn't where it's one of our passions, because it's not where the best athlete necessarily gets you ahead like other sports. You have to have skill, but they're developable skills. And the best hockey players are they're the best because they put the most passion and the most effort into it. And that's what Josh Alexander means.
We love our grinders. There's no doubt about that. Hey, let's not forget about the ladies. Giselle Shaw, Kylie Ray, Serena Deeb, to name a few. Women's wrestling's on blast off, isn't it?
Yeah, look, for many years, women were not treated with proper respect in this industry. And thankfully, that's changed over the last many years. I'm very proud. One of the things I'm super proud of in my career is back in TNA wrestling in about 2008, I think it was, when we started looking at doing women's wrestling. We wanted to do it differently, because at the time, what was out there in wrestling, it was still women rolling around in jello or mud or bikini fights or pillow fights, or two 22-year-old women fighting over who was going to get to sleep with a 50-something-year-old man. And that's that's not treating them, as athletes. So we had the opportunity, and Gail Kim was a big part of this because she was such an advocate for women's wrestling and its ability to succeed. But Gail Kim, Awesome Kong, Tracy Brooks, Jackie Moore, all of these female athletes that we had, I had the opportunity, along with Dutch Mantel, and obviously most importantly, all of the female athletes, to build a women's division in the TNA Knockouts that was built on athleticism, and respect. So getting to feature these females as the strong, powerful athletes and performers that they were, I think really revolutionized the game, and is what led us to where wrestling is now, where you see, even in the other companies, that the women are getting their due. They're getting to main event. They're getting to make bigger, paydays and make more money. There's still a lot of striving to do, for sure, but the strides that have been made in the last 15 years are huge, and it's long overdue.
I look at myself as someone, WrestleMania 1, 2, I remember standing in line overnight to get a ticket to see it, a closed circuit TV, like if you can remember that. And that's where I started my love for wrestling. So I would peg that sometime in the 80s. And, many years have obviously passed, and I've kind of come in and out of the sport. But I'll ask you this question, and only because you've seen and done every job in the business and seen it rise and fall and come back again. What's the state of professional wrestling on the giant right now in terms of North American pro wrestling?
I mean, look, I think wrestling is in such a tremendous spot right now. It's just been so resilient over the years, from being that affordable entertainment from people in the Depression era on through the carnivals and everything else, becoming one of the first big hits coming out of the advent of television, and being a huge part of television programming in the early days, to adapting to being the form of entertainment that you can do 365 days of the year, to becoming something, when you look at it, when closed circuit, like you talked about, closed circuit TV and going and paying to view it on the big screen became a thing. Wrestling was the most successful property doing that. There was the huge boxing ones, and that here or there, but wrestling was the one that could consistently do it. You talk about the cable television explosion. Wrestling, it was the forefront of that. And now, as you see, is with the cord cutting and the move to the streaming services, the wrestling business is at the forefront of that. You look at WWE's mega deal that they've done with Netflix, which is completely transformative. And you look at what AEW has done with their relationship with Turner Broadcasting and their deal streaming on Max. They're getting seen by more viewers than they've ever been seen before, and it's coming through new means. So I think what makes wrestling such a cool genre of entertainment is it's so adaptable, right? It adapts to the times and the climate of the day, and that's why I think no matter how much things change in entertainment, no matter how much things change in society, there'll always be a place for good professional wrestling, because at the end of the day, it's theater, and it's good versus bad. When we do it right, it's shared experience. It's going there, feeling something with other people, and having that shared and common experience. And that's a great thing for us as a society.
Well, Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, it will be available on for those who can't get down to the Mattamy and the Maple Leaf Gardens. It will be able to be seen and streamed, right?
Yeah, it'll be on Triller TV. You can go to Triller.tv, or you can download. They've got an amazing app, Triller TV app. You can go on there. It's available for purchase on pay-per-view there. And, or if you can make it down, tickets are moving fast. There's limited tickets left, but there's still some out there. Get a chance. Walk under that marquee that says Maple Leaf Gardens, walk in that door and walk in there and be in the most famous venue in our country.
Okay, so I'm going to lean on your experience here for one last thing here. I need you to just give me a short, however long you want, just give me a little promo for the event on Saturday. Give me a little promo. And you can go into character if you want.
Let me tell you something, Bubba. What we got here is we got the very best from all over the wrestling world. They're not just coming from Vancouver and Calgary and Moncton and Montreal. They're coming from Atlanta. They're coming from LA, Daddy. They're coming from Japan. They're coming from London, England. All the time zones of the world. They all going to coalesce at the Gardens, this Saturday, May the 10th. It goes down, and it goes down hard. We got the very best. I'm going to be there, Bubba. I know you you need to be there, and all those people around here need to be there when MLP Wrestling, Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, comes back to the institution, comes back to the cathedral, comes back to the corner of alternate church. Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling this Saturday, May 10th, the best wrestling you ever damn well gonna see, and you better damn well be there. That's a fact, daddy.
That may well have been the best 60 seconds in Sportsline podcast history. Scott, fantastic. Really, I just honored to meet you and talk to you about what's coming up. Please, anything you need in terms of MLP, you got promotions or you got fights coming up, please let us know. We'll be more than willing to promote. And if you're ever in the area, I know Hamilton's one of your favorites, love to get you on the red couch here. Love to get you on.
Yeah, I would. Thank you so much. I'd love to be up there in studios. Like I said, CHCH, huge part of my life, my childhood, huge part of Maple Leaf Wrestling. And I'm definitely going to take you up on that and appreciate all the support.
Hey, look forward to that. Have a great card. Looking forward to Saturday night. Thanks again, Scott.
Thanks, Bubba.
All right, that's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And if you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports. We love talking wrestling. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline podcast do want to hear from you. Please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you have something to say, we appreciate your comments. For the outstanding people that make the Sportsline podcast possible, thank you so very much. And we'll see you tomorrow.